And if I were an artist, and skillful and subtle, and sought for my purpose a more poignant symbolism, like Melville and himself Bartleby on the page, and the dead letter office so brilliant his metaphor, portraying the great change before Melville's face and already taking place, the hyper-commercialization of the printed word, the cheapened notion of artistic prose, literature, and the expression of the human experience hollowed by hacks for hire, and a publishing marketplace flooded with mediocrity and voices void of meaning. If this were all artistry, and all this prior testimony, like my fiction, concocted, and were I of such creative expert craft, then even still so scarce should be the instances of synthesis so excellently inspired. So seldomly still should mastery muster irony of such profound pith and insight, or capture it in so silent and austere a thing as location, as that provided that day by Providence, and presented to my looming apprehension of my distraught perspective. Forasmuch that juxtaposed between the only two buildings on that same lonely, deserted stretch of secluded street, where that day I was, structural symbols representing with acute precision the only two potential explanations, as far as I've narrowed it, as to the same present predicament that yet preoccupies me. Whose prerogative compels my persecution and conspires with these hicks against me? For this Kendall County Foxden, this quiet Yorkville, these are the feeding grounds of Dennis Hastert, former Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, in theory once the third most powerful man in the free world, second in line behind the vice honcho after the head honcho himself, in the order of ascension unto the presidency, exposed child molester. And he lurked here and rose through the high school. And it takes a village to raise a child, and a municipality to look the other way and allow a child predator to operate. And there's a reason that they don't put living people on postage stamps, lest they defame themselves, but unto the embarrassment of the issuing institution. And at some of the public schools within these neighbors, Yorkville and Oswego, if you know where to look, one can still discern certain emptied spots upon the walls, where honor was once done to the hideous thing Hastert, and memorialized the roots of his high political achievements, which stripped receptacles now serve their point more sincerely, for the void shrines which now they present, in tribute to the hollow wholesomeness of this vain, profane, and godless secular sector people. And the Germans didn't lose World War II. They just had to learn English. And whereas they once fought for the fatherland, and who the fuck fights for the fatherland anyways, and not for the mother country? But thereafter instead, the new aim became for the father name, and that Deutschland give rise to the supreme male. And only but the German tongue was defeated, that English, and not the German glottal, became the language of the world. But the Nazi fire of its fraternity advanced on and raged and rages, that it dominates the day, like the dark at night. For the lessons were learned from past mistakes, that the trick is not to lie greatly, that the more so the people will believe it, but not to lie or speak or exist at all, except in secret, and be the soft underbelly of suburbia, and lurk like the shadow, and hide, smiling with scheme in plain sight, and give opposition no bannerhead or face or force against which to rally. Yet nonetheless, the long beards of many of the long-time townies around here betray the better prudence of blending in, projecting membership within this local municipal paramilitary fraternity of closet fogs and pedophiles, which ugly insidious boys club force of sodomites swells, like all these local malignant municipal tumor towns themselves. And all of the family men around here have bowed down to their abomination together, most certainly, and they secretly share their little children among their shadow institution. And among this people something satanic is conceived. and all of these nearby burgs, their brotherhood of benign subterfuge. They are the blasphemous body of the blasphemous birth child. Blasphemous birth child. Peruse the local publications, the shopper, the community planner, the little newspaper periodical. On every goddamn page, pictures of the little children, like a magazine catalog of the local inventory. Walk down Bridge Street. For many miles, the only crossway over the flowing Fox River, the only southward passage out of town. And visit the little downtown. There's a little youth performing arts center, which is adjacent to a bar on one side, and a deli, and then another bar on the other. Upon the window of the little YPAC location, though, large sticker images of little girls are displayed as advertisements, like cuts of lamb's meat veal, exhibited through the windows of a butcher shop. One of these YPAC window stickers might be even larger than life size, and features a prepubescent little girl dressed in her gymnastic leotard, doing a stag split handstand, her legs split spread open front and back. The hump of her prepubescent little vagina against the backdrop of her rearmost thigh. The hump of her prepubescent little vagina against the backdrop of her rearmost inner thigh, and veiled from view to a degree just pre-pornographic by a strip of her polyester leotard. Yet, nevertheless, her prepubescent little private part in the picture placed prominently on display. If the little girl were physically mature enough to have pubic hair and didn't shave, then her pubic hair would be discernible on that same skin that the window sticker exhibits. That if any more skin at all were shown bare, a naked lip of this little girl's little labium would be advertised on the window of the local YPAC. And here I can hear the voices of you perverted gainsayers that, boy, how vivid my description, and how thoroughly I seem to have studied the picture on the window, even though, unto my own damnation, then I adequately disclosed the damnable detail, and at my own expense, then I've taken upon me the depiction, unto every full extent, of this evil municipality, that this is a people that doesn't suffer it, but happily abides a little girl's prepubescent little pussy being put up prominently in public view, and blatantly beside the parallel scenery as one waits at the stoplight right out in front of it, that all the fathers who need to pass southward through Yorkville or northward along their way throughout the day, they can all stare and be made aware in just what sort of perversion they can share and can watch while within its seedy lair, should they enroll their daughters there. When I could have, more simply, and certainly more safely, disregarded the delicate detail altogether, or withheld or understated its particularly perilous points, or admitted one ugly element among the morbid multitude of lamentable memories which comprise this loathsome dissertation, and so should have spared myself such insinuation and obvious speculation and damning accusation, and the awkward silence that its citation should less inspire than incur amidst every conversation, among every company, within every room ever. So, fuck off and die if this was you, who would so gainsay, because you're made uncomfortable by what I convey, for this people compel the things that I relay. And I didn't have to, and could have avoided the conspicuous cost of such a charge, yet here I've spared me none of the inconvenience of truthful report, but I've made as clear as I can the corruption of this people. The United City of Yorkville was incorporated in the foul year of our Lord, 1836. Across the street, just down the road from the YPAC, a popular burger joint proudly displays the number on its emblem. Below, imagery of Gothic macabre, with a skull with long Viking beard, above a set of crossbones. But so what, right? Well, play with the numbers. Soon it seems like a celebration of sinister sixes, in that 18 is 6 plus 6 plus 6, next to 36, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6, plus 6 plus 6 plus 6, and 3 times 6 next to 6 squared. And 18 is a triplet of 6s, next to then a pair of triplet 6s. Again, though, so what? Then you take one of the numbered state routes, once south out of town. And there's a sign that posts the mileage away of cities away from along its eastward distance that are and there's a sign that posts the mileage away of cities along its eastward distance. That from that point Oswego is 6 miles, Naperville 18. And I'm willing to wager that the very middle of the span of the routes run through Aurora, which city on the sign is not listed, though it lies between the two that are, I'll bet that it's about a dozen miles away from that same spot. Yorkville's police department is across the street from the high school, and next door neighbor to the elementary school on the one side, and shares a parking lot with the public library on the other, and fields of extracurricular school sports for its backyard. That the police department is at the very heart of a large circular public school campus, just like Oswego too, where the police department has just relocated itself into the new headquarters that it just finished building, right next to the very large high school, which also was just recently built with it, abandoning the prior location of its department, which was way more communal seeming and was more easily accessible into a much larger residential concentration, as it were, immediately beyond its backyard, and into the large franchise retail business district, which begins just down the road from where its front face once was. And perhaps prudently, and for the sake of student safety, the police have thusly placed their precinct. Yet it seems just too perfectly suited to these secular Spartans. And any of these details, the police location, the numbers, the periodicals, the uniform beard, like Viking celebration, even the YPAC peep show, if it were the only questionable component, any of these elements taken singularly seems not nearly so sinister. Even the provocative YPAC window dressing can be chalked up to one oblivious or obtuse or objectionable or irresponsible mother and former gymnast herself, perhaps. But combined, one discerns the features of a corrupt face. And truth be told, I've nothing but respect and good things to say about this Yorkville police force, for they've been nothing but cool to me. And they've handled the doubtless headache of my infamy with only patience and discretion. And what's more, I'm on the side of law and order, and the police are vital to this American stability and comfort, and indispensable to the social fabric. In this coddled America of my earlier reference, it takes for granted and so little appreciates that in any dire situation, help is a phone call away. But this American people now, they treat the police as though they're there to settle bickering arguments, and not that humanity has been horrible and ruthless, violent always, and that some individuals put on a badge and a uniform and automatically wear a target and assume fault for the anger and hostility of spoiled, discontented brats. And the blacks would claim to the contrary, and at the time that I type these things, the police as an institution are being pummeled daily in the media such as I've never seen before. Oh, Negro, will you exalt idols who wrap celebration to guns and gang affiliation and pimpin' hoes and thug living and defund the protectorate? And will your idols protect you? Then call on them. And I had questioned whether to include commentary on the police at all, for right now they hear reproach of all voices. Yet there have been few in my precarious position who have felt so safe in the midst of prophecy, and I would be a fool to think that the police have had little to do with this. Yet ultimately, the officer patrolling a beat likely has little say about where they put the office, but such decisions are made according to a higher, shadowy agenda. And ultimately as well, I'm obliged to report faithfully on what things I see, and such things as loom worrisome to me. And what good should my testimony be if I should cherry-pick conveniently? But so how appropriate it would seem, though, taking into account all such community characterization, And how shrewdly astute the grand omniscient and the sky's cosmic satirist. If I wish to capture parody in a place, perfect parody in a place, in a building, and as though contained in the, in the shadow, let's say. The shadow, a thing without substance, but which adds aspect to structure, relative under each distinct degree of light. A thing connected, but according to the angle of light upon it. And that's there, but only if and because the light is. If I wanted to capture parody in a building, and within the symbolic shadow of that conceptual edifice, conjure something as like adherent to schema. Schema, which conceptual association occurs involuntarily, but only if it was prior there to find, its place already in the mind, between where concept would already henceforth bind, and thereafter influence the present from behind. If it were my purpose with a particular place, to not only embed, but complement, as with its best and most apparent schematic likeness, that the prose which should then hence proceed, and that surrounds use of that rhetorical place, should shine, like figurative light, upon that place, and make use of the shape of the shade that light creates from its conceptual structure. If I sought to supplement an impression upon this prose most befitting of the shadow that I mean to convey, if it were intentional or at all within my control, for that I sought in a place to best impart my point, a most evocative face, but also because I meant to convey, yet not to say, but with silent shade hue the view with shadow play. If I meant to quietly invoke undertones of martial control, of censorship and filtered correspondence and watchful bands of intercept, of eyes watching and veiled surveillance and vigilance like machine metric, of disguise like daily dispatch, and circulation like commissioned patrol, of federal parameters passing through the backyard, and every day around every street corner, of interchangeable pieces moving on a board, of a 1,000,000-man army and more, of faceless, nameless soldiers gathered under secular bannerhead, and employees like worker ants and sworn to loyalty under oath, of civil institution like federal embassy and foreign authority in every U.S. town. If I wish to conceptualize in an institution a secular notion close like my next-door neighbor, with exceptional maneuvering latitude and capacity like military force, but also quiet like choice infiltration and with boundless civil source. If I sought the business version of government with which to juxtapose the business version of theology, and through common corruption explore which of the only two possible sources, civic or cleric, camouflages the conduit which channels charge to the culprits who create my clandestine incarceration. If such were my deliberate endeavor, then I doubt I should have imagined to the scenery such suitable symbolism as that so adroitly contrived that day by fate.